order of the Capitola Planning Commission Thursday, April 2nd meeting. This meeting is being cablecast live on Charter Communications Cable Channel 8 and is being recorded to be replayed on Monday and Friday next week at 1 p.m. on Charter 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed from the city's website. And tonight our technician is Victor Herman. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phones during the meeting, and if you come up to speak, please do sign in at the podium so that we get your name correct in the minutes. And if you'd now all join me, stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'll move on to oral communications. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
This is the time for the public. Anyone in the public who would like to speak on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to commissioner comments.
I actually do have one.
Okay.
And a request of staff. I've been made aware that there continues to be individuals renting their homes on Depot Hill by the week and as vacation rentals. So I would ask staff that maybe we look at, I know we talked about this once before, but if the intent is not to have weekly vacation rentals up there and they're circumventing that, maybe we could look at some way to recommendations that we can circumvent that problem so that we can meet the intent of it being long-term rentals, not necessarily a by-the-week type rental. So that's one comment I have.
Yeah, you know, it is a tricky enforcement activity to catch the folks that are renting longer than or less than 30 days. I know in the past we've contacted some and they simply changed the website to say 30 days or more.
Right.
And a couple weeks later, if we're not monitoring, it certainly goes back. One thing that's happened, though, is the state legislature has a proposed bill that would require Vrbo and Airbnb to add the cost of the local agency's TOT to the bill so that that money is captured. They're, of course, resisting it, but it would really be no different than, say, Amazon or some other internet that applies a local or state sales tax rate. So that could be, hopefully, a fix at the state level.
Well, I actually have maybe a recommendation then. If we look at how we charge TOT right now, and if they rent this by the month, and we charge them a TOT for a rental by the month when it's rented, because the ones that has been brought to my attention, they rent it for $5,000 a week, but it's at a month-only time, right? So if we charge them the TOT for the 30-day amount, it may discourage them from doing a weekly rental because there wouldn't be that much. So maybe that's the way around it. I don't know. It'd be something to look at anyway.
Yeah, it's something we're aware of, and we'll continue to kind of monitor what's going on in the state, and we're aware that it's a problem locally as well.
Do we send letters to those folks about?
We do. If we're made aware of somebody that's operating either outside of the transient rental overlay zone or someone that's just not paying the TOT, we do follow up, but it's just difficult to monitor unless you're doing it full time.
Right. Well, you know, word of mouth works up there, so
yeah.
I'll forward you the information I have and you can look at it.
Thank you.
Ron?
Yes, Madam Chairman and members of the Council, or Planning Commission, I want to inform you this tonight is my last night as Planning Commissioner. My appointment has a new Planning Commissioner for you. I've enjoyed working with you. I've enjoyed extremely working with the staff, but you're going to have to put up with me out in the audience now.
Thank you, Commissioner Graves.
Thank you.
We'll miss you.
I doubt it.
Staff comments.
Well, with that, I would have to relay staff's appreciation of Commissioner Graves' long service to the city, both on the council and the Planning Commission, and his wealth of knowledge, institutional knowledge, I'm certain will be missed and hard to replace. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Approval of the minutes from the March 5th Planning Commission meeting. Are there any changes?
I'd move the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed.
we do a roll call today?
Oh,
We're all here, so.
we skipped the roll call.
We did.
Everyone's here.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Welch,
Here.
Commissioner Graves,
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz, Commissioner Newman,
Here.
Chairperson Smith.
That
Thank you.
That must mean that we all want to get paid. That's the reason.
Yeah.
Was that
Right now, he tipped you off.
Skipped right over that one. Keep me honest. Okay, now we're moving to the consent calendar. Tonight, we have 2 items on the consent calendar, and these 2 matters will be considered as a single item. We will have 1 vote for both items unless a member of the public or one of the commissioners would like to pull one of the 2 items. The 2 items are, the first one is 828 Bay Avenue, Suite Number 210, a conditional use permit for a 3,882 square foot general office located in the Community Commercial Zoning District. And the second one is the Capitola Village parking meter time limits. We need to issue a coastal development permit to increase the current time limit from 2 hours to 3 hours on a trial basis, which will run from May 1st, 2015 through November 25th, 2015. Is there any commissioner that would like to pull either of these items?
I don't know that I want to pull them, but I would like to make comments on both. So could we vote on them individually? It's not going to change your vote or anything, but I'd like to make my comments known.
Individual, okay. Is there a member of the public that would like to pull either of the items from consent? Seeing none,
Madam Chair?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether Commissioner Graves was asking for a separate vote, but I would also ask for a separate vote because I'm going to have to recuse myself on one of them.
Okay.
And I was, yeah, so that we could take them individually.
Me as well. You might not have anybody left in the room.
So are all 3 of you recusing yourself on the same item?
I am
No, I'm not
recusing myself on
recusing.
A.
Oh,
So
okay.
I-
On A. So we have 2 recused on A and none on B. So let's go ahead and take them individually. Do you,
So I will excuse myself and go out of the room.
since they're on consent, there's no discussion. You don't have to leave the room. You're welcome
I'm
to
happy
stay.
to, as
Just-
long as the discussion doesn't get too...
And I'd just like to make a comment on the item, and we don't need the staff to present it or anything. I wonder how the Planning Commission, and this is for the city in general, how the Planning Commission feels and when or do they desire that the staff take up this idea of loss of retail space to office space as part of the new zoning ordinance. I would think that it's an appropriate time, and considering the short time before we get into zoning matters, that may be the best way to handle it, but I thought maybe we could make some type of comment tonight that we really need to look at this issue. It's risen before when we did the dialysis center out on the Clare Street loop, and it's something that I think we need to consider. There is a dirge of office space in Capitola that doesn't always appear on the main thoroughfares like Bay Avenue or 41st, but I think it's something that we should consider. That's my comment on that item.
That's a good comment, and I do believe that it's included
Yes.
already in our discussion. So with that, Linda, do we need a roll call vote since we have 2 abstaining?
Probably a good idea.
Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Commissioner Welch?
Aye.
This is item A.
This is on item A.
I'll move item A.
Oh.
Oh,
I just thought I'd keep you in line.
I'm having a good night tonight. This is going to be fun.
I'll second.
okay.
Now, roll call vote, please.
On item A, Commissioner
Aye.
Welch,
Aye.
Commissioner Graves,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Recuse.
Commissioner Newman,
Same.
refused, and Chairperson Smith.
Aye.
Passes 3 ayes, no noes, and 2 recuses.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Moving to item B.
I will move item B, Capitola Village.
I do want to make comments on it,
I'll make
though.
some comments on that.
Yeah, so if you go ahead and get a second.
and I'll-
Motion, then you can.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
I'd like to make some comments, Madam Chairperson. I watched the council meeting that acted on this item prior to this coming before us, and I think that that's inherently wrong, and I'll tell you why. I think we're each appointed by a council member, and if we want to stay in good standings with them, how could we tonight vote against their wishes? That's my first comment. But I'd like to also make a comment on the 3-hour parking that's going to be tried on a trial basis. It was interesting to watch the meeting because several of the councilmen had interviewed people down in the village, and as you know, I'm there every morning and every evening in the village, and I did likewise, and it appeared that there was a pretty even divide between the restaurants and bars and the retail shops being on opposite poles, whether they wanted to retain the 2 hours or the 3 hours. And I just personally believed, after listening to the council meeting, that probably could have answered and pleased everybody in the village by continuing the 2 hours up to 5 o'clock. Because at 5 o'clock, between 5 and 8, that's a perfect 3-hour window, and that's when the bars would need people to stay longer than the 2 hours. Nobody takes a 2-hour lunch that works in this community, but, you know, the beachgoers. So I just wanted to make those comments.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Graves. Any other comments?
As long as there are comments being made, I'd like to make one. I've served at the pleasure of 2 council members over my 2 terms as Planning Commission, and I personally have never been coerced or chastised or in any way contacted by either one of my council members. So I would be really surprised if there was anybody on, and dismayed if there was anybody on the council in Capitola who would be upset with any vote that they certainly vote against us all the time, so, you know, that it happens both ways, and I would hope that we wouldn't vote for or against something because we were worried about what our council member thought. So I just had to say that.
Good point. It's just the perception of the public. That's the reason I said that I felt that this item should have came to us first and then to the council. That was the only thing I was, and I guess it's from taking the ethics test for 2 hours last week or whenever it was.
Yeah, Madam Chair, you know, I would acknowledge it is a bit of an awkward process, and it's one of the things we do intend to introduce when we update the zoning code, is allowing the City Council to approve coastal development permits on our first pass if it's a council item, so we don't have to circle back to the Planning Commission and put anybody in an awkward spot or have a public perception problem. So that's something we'll look at as well down the road.
That would be good. 'Cause
And
it
I
is a
wasn't
little
meaning to
awkward.
accuse anybody.
It did seem strange, I mean, but
Yeah.
you know.
It did seem strange, but I have to trump that I would never be afraid to vote against what council had said. But we have a motion, we have a second. We don't have anybody recusing. I
You
don't
remembered
see a mixed vote, so I'm going to just go for all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed, unanimous. Moving now to the public hearings. The public hearings are intended to provide an opportunity for the public to discuss each item, and the procedure is as follows. Staff will do a presentation. We'll invite the public to speak. The Planning Commissioner will be able to ask questions of staff and of the applicant as that process goes through. Once the public has spoken, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the Commission, and the Commission will then discuss it and make a decision. So with that, the first item we have is 502 Pines. Staff report, please.
Madam Chair, I will have to recuse myself on this item. I came mostly for the review of the minutes.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Have a good evening, Ed.
Are you coming back, Ed?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you. Before you this evening is a subdivision application and a design permit application for a single-family home and a duplex at 502 Pine Street. 502 Pine Street is located in the multifamily medium-density zoning district. I'd like you to take a minute and look at the slide and notice in this block of Pine Street there is a mix of different lot sizes. So as we're going through the application, there are some lot sizes that aren't quite as long. There are some that are more narrow. There's the immediate neighborhood is mixed of single-family homes, duplexes. There's properties with up to 6 apartments on the property and shared parking. So just things to note as we move through this application. It's not a very uniform block, okay? Which is the intent, I think, behind this zone. The property is currently a 14,362 square foot parcel. The proposal is to subdivide the property into 2 lots of record. They're proposing parcel A on the front of the property. and parcel B will be located, it's a bit larger, on the back of the property. The applicant is proposing a duplex on the front lot and a single-family home on the back lot. There's also a shared driveway proposed between the two, and each site has its own parking. The application satisfies all development standards of the code and the subdivision code, except for the minimum lot depth of 100 feet that is required for parcel A. Parcel A is 92 feet deep. There are a variety of lot sizes and dimensions throughout the Pine Street area, as I just mentioned. The 92 feet lot depth will not create an unusual pattern along the street. And in your packet, there is a submittal from the applicant stating his preference for the 92 feet as well. This is the front elevation of the single-family home. The single-family home will have a Spanish-influenced finishes with stucco siding, true divided lights, windows, and a mission tile roof. This is the material board submitted by the owner. As you can see here, there are more details of stone and tile accents included. This slide shows the back of the single-family home and the two sides. As you can see, the home has been designed to appear as a single story as viewed from the rear and north elevation. Now we'll discuss the duplex.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because the property is situated north and south, go back one slide, and it kind of indicates that the first thing you showed us was the front of the house, and I assume that it's facing pretty south, and that the back of the house is to the north, and of course the Biancalana property to the east, and to the west, the other gentleman that has corresponded with us. But yet this says differently on this display. If you look at south side, the south side of this house would be the front of the house.
I think yeah, that's true. So the south side of the house would be the front of the house, and the north would be the rear elevation. And then
You understand what I...
yes, so the east
I don't know which one's east and west.
So east would be the bottom left side. That's what would face the property to the right. And the bottom right side of the slide is what would be facing the property to the left as viewed from the street. So this is the proposed duplex on the front lot. The duplex will utilize the same Spanish-influenced finishes as the single-family home, creating a uniform look throughout the property. The south elevation in the lower right-hand corner is the elevation that will be seen from Pine Street. The designer included a covered porch in that area to have a presence at the street level. Each unit will have a single enclosed parking space and tandem parking spaces in front of the garage, so 2 spaces for each unit. A landscape plan is included for the entire project. Within the code, a multifamily development is required to include irrigation plans and landscape plans, which were in the packet. The landscape plan includes 5 new trees to be planted on parcel A and 3 new trees on parcel B. The new trees will contribute towards the city's 15% canopy coverage goals, and the landscape plan also creates privacy between the neighbors and the units within the duplex through the introduction of shrubs, vines, and perennials. I wanted to note on here, you received a correspondence from James and Claudia Kelly, neighbors to the left of the home, and they mentioned some of the trees at this location. Here you can see in the green dots, if out in the field the green dots would be much smaller, but I wanted you to be able to see them on the screen. There are 2 sequoia starts that are out there. They haven't been thriving by any means. They're probably a foot off the ground. There's also 2 Japanese maples located at the front of the property. They also are not thriving. The buds just came through and the leaves, and I'd say they're about 1/3 covered with leaves. They don't look healthy. I don't think they've been watered or maintained correctly. And there's also a cypress tree on the corner which is over the redwoods. The redwood's not doing that well. But that tree, there was comments about the electrical wires. So for this project, the new electrical wires will be underground, but the wires going to the neighbor's property do go through the cypress tree. I'll leave it to Mr. Kramer to talk to you about tonight, but I think he's willing to do some trimming or cut down that tree if you would like to see that as a condition this evening. And I wanted to mention the other trees because they're in bad health. They were part of a replanting for a previous tree that was cut down on the property, but I believe what the applicant has provided is a much more uniform landscape plan that will look nice upon completion compared to the 4 trees that are in distress. Thank you.
Katie, if I can just clarify, on the landscaping plan that we looked at, the green dots and the red dots are gone, correct?
They're gone, and they're not required to put them in there because they're less than a 6-inch diameter.
Right.
So,
Okay, thank you.
okay. The cypress was there on the plan.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to talk about the stormwater. So when this application came in, it went to the Arkansite Committee. Following Arkansite, there's new California state regulations for stormwater and for all stormwater to be controlled on site, not impacting neighbors. So this has gone through a third-party review. It's in preliminary compliance. I don't think they've gone through the final calculations, engineering calculations. They'll go through that expense and that work after the Planning Commission meeting. They didn't want to go too far down the road of engineering prior to an approval conceptually. So this project is in compliance and should not have any impacts of stormwater shedding onto the other properties. So with that, staff recommends approval of application 14175, and I'm here and happy to answer any questions. And I know the applicant is here this evening with the designer and engineer. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Any questions of staff?
The only questions I have are the questions that relate, in the letter from the neighbor, number 7 basically relates to heights. And I was a bit confused by the way that they stated it, but my feeling is that all the heights are within code and we don't have a problem with any height irregularities, correct?
That's correct.
Right.
I think there may have been, in reading the chart that I put together, confusion with setbacks versus height, because I know there's a 15-foot setback in one area, but
Okay.
the heights, setbacks are all in compliance.
Because there's going to be grading done to accommodate the duplex parking and everything else, how was the height measured? Because I know on a slope, you take the existing slope and you know, meet your medium and then apply the ordinance. Was that done in this case to clarify that number 7?
We usually measure height from existing grade.
Yes.
I can take a look at that while we work through other items and just ensure that, but I'm almost 100% positive that it was done in the areas. Actually, I am positive on the in the areas that are excavated. They do not exceed 25 feet from the ridge of the homes to the finished grade, and that's how it was measured in the back building as well, where the excavation.
That's what I was hoping you wouldn't say. The finished grade will be a grade that is somewhat less than what it is today.
Yes.
And I believe the ordinance calls for doing the calculation at, if you have a sloped lot, you take the degree of slope, or whatever you want to say, and you make a happy medium, and you measure everything from that point. That's the way they used to be. Now, it may have been changed, but you keep telling me the zoning ordinance hasn't been updated in years, so I'm just questioning it.
So it complies with both, Ron. If you were to measure it from existing grade, the home would be well under.
Okay.
But it complies with from finished grade, because they're excavating down, it does not exceed 25 feet.
Okay.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks. Any other questions of staff? Okay, with this, is the applicant here, and would you like to speak?
Not particularly, unless...
Oh, okay. please tell us your name?
Sure. Bob DeWitt, civil engineer representing Mr. Kramer on this project. Put my name down here. First of all, thank you for Katie for doing a thorough job on the staff report. It was very well done, and we had a meeting out at the site today to go over a few things, and went very well. Also, prefacing my remarks, which relates to one of the items I have, my business is 38 years old, and I just sold it yesterday to a company out of Santa Rosa, and I'll continue to work. The company will continue under the name, but happily I'm on the road to retirement, so it's good.
Good luck.
If you look at the conditions of approval, I have a few clarification items that we need to clear up. Starting on page 42, condition number 3, the applicant shall have prepared a final parcel map by a registered civil engineer. That would be myself. We should add in there, or licensed land surveyor, because they are also authorized to file maps, and in this case, the person that purchased my business is a land surveyor, and he may be signing the map, and so we'd like to have that added in there. Also, the last sentence of number 3, the parcel map shall include new legal descriptions. It's not usual to include a meets and bounds legal description on a parcel map. You can describe the parcel as being, in the case of the front parcel, is parcel A of map filed in volume, say 36 of parcel maps at page 5, and that's a perfectly adequate description. So you don't really need to have a legal description of each of the parcels on the parcel map. We could certainly add that to the parcel map, but it's not a usual requirement. So I'll just kind of leave that up to the commission, maybe get some input from staff on that. Item number 4, prior to the recordation of the final parcel map, the existing structures on the property must be demolished. I think it would be to the owner's benefit to have that triggered to the issuance of a building permit rather than the filing of the map. And the reason I say that is that he's going to want to file the map, get the parcels created, get assessor's parcel numbers assigned, and those APNs won't be assigned until the map is recorded. And he'll need that in order to get the other entitlements he needs. For example, the will serve letter from Soquel Creek Water, will serve letter from the sanitation district, and so forth. So just request that you consider triggering the demolish of the buildings with the issuance of a building permit, which I think would accomplish the same purpose as that. So, item number 6, prior to the recordation of the parcel map, a maintenance agreement shall be recorded and referenced on the parcel map. Here again, that's not a usual requirement for parcel maps. We can certainly do that. But if the map isn't of record, we can't refer to parcel A and parcel B because they don't exist. And we would have to refer to, meets and bounds descriptions of those, and it just makes extra work, and it's really unnecessary. These maintenance agreements and access easements for the shared driveway would be triggered when the property is sold to a new owner, for example. They would have to have these easements, and the usual process would be to describe those easements at the time of the sale. So that would be after the parcel map is recorded. And then, let's see, there was also, condition number 5, just backing up a little bit, the requirement for a sidewalk along Pine Street. It says, in the last sentence, in lieu of installing the sidewalk, the developer may enter into a deferred improvement agreement with the city. But then if you go to next page, 43, item number 21, that says that the sidewalk has to be put in, so there seems to be a conflict there. I don't know what the city's intention is there, but that conflict should be resolved one way or the other. And the reason we do this is because we're the guys that, when we submit the final parcel map, this becomes a checklist, and so anytime there's a conflict in the checklist, it makes it difficult to file the map and carry through. So that's the reason for my comments tonight. If there's any questions on the engineering or the drainage or any of that, happy to answer it. Otherwise, I'll sit down.
I'm sorry you're retiring. You're really
I'll be around for a while. no
And
worries.
thank you for bringing up those issues. I would, before we have the next question, I'd like to have staff comment on those items.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm afraid that we're not prepared to answer each and every one of those questions. I think we need to go back and research some of those. Some I think we can respond to, but I'm afraid we would not be able to say yes or no to a lot of those requests here this evening.
Is it something, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, that can be resolved between the two of you? Because it doesn't seem like an issue that affects us. This is just an issue of checklist and something that we can ask staff and the occupant to.
We could, although with your, presuming you would approve the application, those conditions would be established this evening.
Can we?
We can rewrite those conditions so that it allows for the intent of the condition with modifications
Right.
that
You know,
staff and
I'd like
applicant
to
agree
make a
with.
comment. These conditions have been run through the city attorney, and before I'd be happy to subscribe to the architect that did this work, I'm sure these things can be resolved, but they need to be resolved before these conditions are set in stone with a final vote. He said he's been working with staff, was the preamble to his comments. Did he bring these things to you before when the plans were submitted and stuff?
This is the first I've heard of these. I could touch upon a few of them and work my way.
Well, what I'm thinking of
there's-
is, they got a flag lot here, and they got a driveway with an easement that has to be created to get to the flag lot. There's a lot of things here, and there's a reason for having these orders. I kind of agree with him. The first one he talked about, you could wait till the final plans on that one, but some of these others are more technical in nature and basically give the meets and bounds position, figures on the property so that we know the lot size and where it's developed. And in a subdivision, those are very important, and this is a two-lot subdivision. So I want to just make sure it's clear.
If it was the Planning Commission's pleasure, I think you could give us authority to work with the applicant and try to resolve some of these so that it does meet the intent.
So let's continue with the discussion, and when we come back for further discussion, we can talk about it a little more then.
Let me clarify what I said earlier. I'm very happy to speak to you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. I don't want to just hear myself talk. Now, if it had been yesterday, I would have had to tell you that we would really want to build a skate park. But since there will be two in my neighborhood, I don't need to worry about that. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for your service, Madam Chairperson, and the members of the commission. I also very much want to thank staff for helping us get to this point. I would be, if it is appropriate, I would be willing to accept a conditional approval pending language changes. There was nothing in that discussion that affects the design, the structures, the functionality. I would be very pleased to have a conditional approval while that language was modified. The reason why I stood here at this point is to address maybe some of the issues that were brought up by the neighbor from 506. Would now be an appropriate time to discuss that?
Sure.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted the letter read first or whatever. First of all, we're very willing to work with soon-to-be next-door neighbor. We will actually, of course, be living at the property. So I'm very happy to establish a good neighborly rapport. And as it relates to the landscaping, if the Planning Commission deems it appropriate, any of the compensatory landscape items that were added as a result of a large redwood tree having been taken down, these items are not doing very well. We would be happy to have them removed and replaced with a consistent landscape plan that wasn't actually impacted by items that had been added 3 or 4 years ago. If it's your pleasure, we're happy to have those unearthed and, again, have a more consistent plan. Regarding the cypress tree, we would be pleased to make a 25% reduction in the canopy. which is what staff has advised would be the maximum amount allowable. I'd like to offer that we would make that maintenance and then ask my new neighbor to determine whether that's a tree that they want and whether that tree is inhibiting their porch life, which is, I think, one of the things that they expressed, and also the PG&E wires, which would actually be safer if the tree were trimmed. So I would like to make that offer. And regarding any other piece of landscape, I just as soon start from scratch, to be honest, but we included the existing landscape items in the packet just as a baseline idea. Wide open on how we might address the landscape in a nice, consistent way. Trees are important, and I actually don't want to lose the cypress tree myself personally without taking a look at what it would look like if it were well maintained. That was really, I think, some of the primary issues, in addition to the item that you requested clarification on regarding heights and setbacks and whatnot. Everything conforms to the city's guidelines with the exception request of this 100-foot lot depth line, which in one case were 92 and in one case were 86. Otherwise, we live on the street. You're my neighbors already. We're happy to continue to live on the street. We did not think that consistent with that neighborhood would be McMansion property. I am currently living with my wife Ann in a two-parcel structure with 3 residents. We live in a townhouse with an adjoined wall to our neighbor, as well as a single-family home at the front of the street. What we've tried to do is create the same type of parcel with different look and feel, different design, but consistent with what is also seen already on Pine Street. And with that, I don't have any other comments other than thank you. I think you take questions later. Is that right, Madam Chairperson?
Does the commission have questions for the applicant?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Under number 1 of your neighbor's concerns was a redwood tree that had been moved, or there was a sucker coming up on his property.
Sure. Let
That's
me explain that. I'm really unaware of the history that resulted in one very large tree being removed. However, there's quite a bit of very large root network still in the soil. So what the Kellys have stated, I think, is probably very true, that redwoods are difficult for the neighbor because they seek water. As part of the penalty for having, or let's say the compensation for having removed that tree, there was a request made to add 3 redwood seedlings, and I think 2, beg your pardon, there are 3 now. 1 was probably deposited by a seagull. But 2 ornamental trees, the cypress was to remain, and these 2 redwoods. They're not in any kind of shape because the truth is the yard hasn't been maintained. I've had it since August, and we put the minimal amount of effort into doing anything other than keeping the grass reasonably looking. So there hasn't been any water, and these trees aren't doing very well. And I'm not trying to, break your liberal hearts, but I'd rather go with a fresh plan myself. You would just need to determine that it was, in the best interest of the city to have those compensatory trees removed. Is that explanation enough?
That did it.
Thanks,
Thank
Gail.
you.
And just to clarify what I think I heard earlier, the 2 ornamental trees were the trees that were planted, and those 2 redwood trees, sequoia trees, are suckers off the roots. They're not trees that got planted.
Oh, I didn't know what a sucker was. I thought they were saying that they attacked their water table.
Oh, no, no,
I
no.
didn't really realize that's what they meant by suckers. Katie has had to explain everything to me.
The 2 ornamental trees, to the best of my knowledge, are the 2 ornamental trees that were replanted. I understand the redwood that's under the cypress was at one point cut, and that is a sucker coming up. The other one looks like it probably is a sucker as well. It's very short.
I went looking for them today, and they both look like suckers to me. Just saying.
I agree.
I really thought they were talking about their potential new neighbors.
No, no, no. I have one question for you myself. Prior to getting the letter, was there any discussion with your neighbors about the landscaping or the trees with you yourself?
Not with me, although I'm aware that the previous owner had numerous discussions, and there is, there are some issues on that side of the property, so, and I think that we could establish a really good working rapport around the landscaping. That's a kind of a no-brainer.
Okay.
There are some more difficult issues that might be harder.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there other people in the public that would like to speak on this item? If so, now's your chance. Please approach the podium.
Yeah, Bob DeWitt again. My comments weren't intended to be showstoppers for the process here. We could actually live with the conditions as written. I would suggest that if you're amenable to this idea is to go ahead and approve this on a conceptual basis. We can work with staff over the next month and the city attorney, clarify these technicalities, and they could come back on the consent agenda next month. But if we have it in conceptual approval, we could proceed with, with the entitlement drawings and not delay the project. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public would like to speak on this item? Hi, please
Hi.
tell us your name.
I'm the other neighbor on the other side. I'm Claudia Kelly, and my husband Jim and I wrote the letter that everyone's been talking about. So I thank you all for being here and listening to our concerns. Anyway, I wasn't planning on talking, so excuse me for that. But I'm going to go back to the redwood tree that you've been asking about. And that historically was an issue for us because of the roots coming onto our property. But when that was removed a few years back, I think there were 2 redwood trees that were planted where the ornamentals are now. And I was surprised that those got planted there. And then I think there was one on the side. And because it's a rental, I don't live at the property, but I'm in and out regularly with tenants or landscaping and tenant issues. Anyway, I noticed that those disappeared at one point, and then the ornamentals ended up where the redwood trees were. So, and I noticed that the one was on the perimeter again, and I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to have more issues here with plumbing. So I didn't like the idea of another redwood tree being planted there. And as far as number 2 in the letter, the cypress tree, it's never been maintained. And the previous owner would always tell us, do whatever you want, but he never maintained it. And it was always kind of an issue. We had to, spend money taking care of his large cypress to keep the residue off of the deck in the front of our duplex. So anyway, I love that David he left a message today, and he said that he would work with us as far as landscaping, and I appreciate that. And I just heard him say that he would reduce it by 25%, so that would be a huge start on that corner. And it is protection from the street. The street has a lot of cars and boats and trailers, and so it does kind of protect you from seeing all of that. So whatever the landscape plan is, we would love to be part of it or see what's going to happen, because our properties are really close. The duplex, the bedrooms are really close to the property line, and the kitchens, and they're looking out at all of that. So it's kind of nice to have a little bit of sunlight come in your house. What else do I want to say? My husband, in number 5, he mentioned it would be nice if we could see a side view with a diagram of our duplex lined up with what's being proposed, so that we would have an idea of what we're going to be looking at, because it is changing dramatically. And the rest was, you talked about our concern with the drainage and the hillside. I'm still a little bit confused about the height proposal, whether it is within regulation or if it's still higher. We have that listed on number 7. The 20-foot height proposal for the second story of the duplex. And then the house plans, it showed the first story at 22 feet, but regulation is 15 feet. So I was a little bit confused what that was all about. And it said the garage is 23 feet, but regulation is 20 feet. So we pulled those numbers off of the plans that we saw.
Katie, can you clarify that for her now?
I can. And I'm happy to walk through those with you at the counter, also going over the plans, but there's setback regulations within the yards that reference 15 and 20 feet. 20 feet, the garage has to be set further back than the primary facade of the home. So I think there was a mix-up between what the regulations are for setback requirements and what they are for height. Height requirements are 25 feet for height, and both buildings comply with the 25-foot height. That will, I should say, the rear building in the back is a single-family home. It has a 25-foot height. The front duplex has a 30-foot height, and the proposal goes up to 27.5 feet. So both are in compliance. They fall under different regulations due to the multifamily in the front and the single-family in the back.
All right. The last thing that we thought we'd just kind of put out there to you is the parking on Pine Street and how tight it is. There's people have their trailers, they have their boats, they have all their cars. I was actually at the property yesterday, and I met a neighbor that I'd never met before. And he lives in one of the duplexes directly across the street from 502. And he told me, he just volunteered that he lives in that house with his wife, and I'm not sure how many other people, but he has 5 cars. And he also has a large trailer. And his trailer's been parked in front of our house since the end of last year without him moving it. And he actually moved it. I think he got tagged, so he was moving it, and that's how I met him when I was over there yesterday. But anyway, we were surprised that the duplexes are 3 bedrooms, because if there's 2 people in each bedroom, and that's 6 people in each duplex, and then if all those people have a car, it's a lot of cars in the neighborhood. So anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there.
Thank you very much. I think it's difficult to imagine that because it has 3 bedrooms, it's going to have 2 people in each bedroom, but a small family would need 3 bedrooms as well and would still only have 2 cars.
Right.
So maybe you'll get lucky and there'll be small families.
Right. Well, we have 3 children, and my husband and I, and like 5 cars. And so it does multiply. So I know our world is changing, and maybe more people have bicycles in Capitola. So, and yeah, maybe whoever lives there will be retired and won't need to be commuting or...
Thank you. And thank you for the comprehensive input that you gave us to look at.
Okay.
We really do appreciate the input.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
for all you do.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the commission. Who'd like to start?
Go ahead. I don't have any issues.
I don't have any issues either. I think that the applicant has done a good job of addressing the concerns of the neighbor, and I think that they'll be able to work these issues out together. I think having to do with the conditions of approval, I feel comfortable that we can have our staff work with not only the applicant but our city attorney to follow the letter of our laws and still do whatever we can for them. So whatever way staff feels that they would like us to word the approval, we can do that, and I feel we can approve it tonight, not conditionally, or maybe conditionally, I'm not sure. And as far as the landscaping, I would favor that the applicant and the neighbor be able to work it out, and I favor the applicant taking out as many trees as they need to replace them. They've said they want to keep the cypress. I hope that's possible in the future. It doesn't sound to me as though there are any other trees of significance on that property at this point. And as far as the suckers for redwoods, you've got to work with them for a number of years. I have one big redwood. I had another one that we had to take out, and you've got to kill the suckers over a number of years, both neighbors and the applicant. You just have to keep working on it with a landscaper that really knows how to use pesticides and or Roundup or whatever they use. So you're going to have to do that, or you're going to get them. And as far as parking is concerned, parking is a problem throughout Capitola. It's in every single neighborhood except possibly Cliffwood Heights, I think. We all have severe, severe problems. But we have to still look at an application, and if it follows all of our ordinances, it's within the letter of the law, we need to approve it. And I would then move to approve this application and ask staff how they'd like to handle the condition changes.
I'll second it for purposes of discussion. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. My discussion is not really exclusively towards this application, but in viewing the property, it appears that on that street there have been a number of new developments. And the number of new developments, did they all have deferred improvement agreements for the sidewalk? And if they did, how is the city administering those deferred agreements? Do you wait until you have a certain number of agreements, or do you... I think we're never going to get to sidewalks unless we start putting them in pretty soon. And the interesting thing is the old Streets and Highway Act of 1913 requires that you have 50% before you can go in and demand that everybody have sidewalks and form an assessment district, or have them do it on their own, whatever they want to do. And we're not working towards that. And so I'm wondering, do we have a calendar? Do we know how many have deferred agreements in that particular one-block stretch, or do you not know?
I don't know for the whole block. I can tell you that next door, because of the large redwood that's in the location of the sidewalk, we issued a deferred sidewalk agreement there. And therefore, for this application, because they would not connect, Steve Jesberg, the Public Works Director, asked that we do a deferred sidewalk agreement until there's enough sequential properties that it makes sense to continue the sidewalk. Because the neighbor to the left...
I understand.
That's not right.
Yeah, I understand. Looking out from the property. To the left, you know, how you're viewing it.
Yeah.
I also noticed across the street that it was developed by one of the neighbors there. There's a duplex and a single-family home that's fairly new. There's been some other remodels down the street, and I was just curious is if we got these agreements from them. Because I'm in favor of the agreement, but I'm also in favor of sometime meeting a threshold or a point where the sidewalks go in. Because when you walk on that street like I did today, and I'm an old-timer, I will mention something. I think you need to get a hold of Public Works fairly soon. The roots from the redwood tree across the street have uplifted the pavement there, and on walking on it today, we saw people walking their dogs and other things that almost tripped and fell because there are no sidewalks in the area. So it's something that needs to be repaired. But that's aside. So you're telling me, I think I understand the answer to the question. You don't know how many have deferred agreements, and the Public Works person, Steve, is deciding when they no longer become deferred, and that bothers me.
I can check in with Steve Jesberg and see...
I like Steve, don't get me
yeah. I can check in with him and see how many exist on Pine Street, and But really, on this instance, he looked at both properties to either side, and he said it does not make sense to have them develop a sidewalk at this point in time because
I don't have any other questions.
the connectivity.
TJ, you have no discussion?
No, the only thing, I'm in favor, I'm interested to make sure that we are moving this so that it doesn't have to come back to us, that the conditions are worked out between the staff. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, now, is that the intent of the motion, Gail? Because I'll
Yes.
withdraw my second.
Yes, that's
I'll
the
withdraw
intent of my-
because I think that it should be run by the city attorney.
Well,
And
I
if they
think I do
have-
too.
And if they have a disagreement, the motion should include the idea that then it's brought back to us.
I agree with that.
Well, I think what I heard was if that's the case, that they're willing to accept these conditions. So
Yeah.
I would just say, if we can move this forward, that we don't have to come back, that if what I heard is true, that the applicant is willing to accept these conditions, but those that have conflict, that we can work with them on and move it forward.
And I would agree with that. I think that the intention of getting it all done at the same time is so that you don't wind up taking the buildings down and then having it sit there for a long time, or get a subdivision put in and then have it sit there for a long time. Or they sell the front lot and it comes back and they don't build the duplexes, they want to build something else. So I think everybody understands and agrees with the intent. And if it gets to the attorney and there's not a way that meets that intent, that also meets the difficulties that they might have, then they go back and do what they said they can do, which is the way that it's written here now.
So if Commissioner Graves is withdrawing, then I'll make the second.
Yeah, I want to make sure that you understand, I understand what you're doing. You're suggesting that the conditions in here, with the exception of pulling out number 15, which contradicts the deferred maintenance agreement or the deferred sidewalk agreement, they're agreeing to build to that. In the meantime, staff is going to meet with the city attorney to go over those items that were broached by the applicant tonight.
That's my
If they cannot come to agreement to the applicant's satisfaction, what happens?
then the applicant has to conform to these conditions.
Okay?
Or they could apply to amend their permit and come back before the planning
Okay.
commission.
Yeah, okay.
I think, if I may make a suggestion, there's a few that we could take out of the disagreement pool. The condition number 3, where it states a final parcel map by a registered civil engineer, we could add or licensed land surveyor. I think that's agreeable.
Okay.
Condition number 4, the proposal would, if they recorded a map and there was an existing home there, would be creating a nonconformity. So that's typically not done in the planning practice. So I would, there's a 2-week appeal period. After the 2-week appeal period, I can issue a demolition permit and they can move forward with the demolition. But I would suggest no modification to number 4. Item number 6, I do think is an item we need to work out with the city attorney and make sure the wording is correct and when each item is recorded. Essentially, when the plat is recorded, we'll have a note on there related to an agreement, so that anyone who looks at the plat in the future will know where to view the agreement in the recorded book.
I'm sorry, Katie, it sounds
was-
like that 5 conflicts with 21 also. That's
Yeah.
And then, exactly, so, 5 is correct, and on 21, we could remove sidewalk.
okay.
So I do think it's working with our attorney on number 6.
Okay.
Okay? Does that mean with the motion and the second? I have a couple of
Yes.
comments. I think the plan is beautiful. I think it's a wonderful plan, and I was really pleasantly surprised when I looked at it, at the way that it laid out and the way that you're putting things together. I do hope you can save the cypress tree. I was looking today and seeing the deck, I can see, maintenance could be a real issue, but it's such a nice front tree to have right at the street level that, with all the redwoods going away, it gives you some mass there of a tree, and I think that's good. Having the landscape plan start, pretty much fresh and go anew, I think is an excellent idea and will yield a much more beautiful landscape for both pieces of property. And I think that good neighbors, can really work out landscaping issues and tree trimming and that kind of thing. And I really look forward to you guys being able to do that. And I think you will. I think you both seem to be really open to being good neighbors, so I wish you the best in that. And with those comments, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we need a roll call vote? Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Welch?
Aye.
Commissioner Graves?
Aye.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Aye.
Chairperson Smith?
Aye. Unanimous. Good luck, and we look forward.
Thank you, Commissioners. We appreciate the consideration.
Thank you.
Thank
Beautiful,
you.
beautiful plan.
Yes. Okay. The next public hearing is regarding the zoning code update, Title 17 of the Capitola Municipal Code, the issues and options review timeline. So we'll wait for Commissioner Newman to return to the dais, and then we'll ask for a staff report.
That's a lot of people from Hill Street, but they must have been.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Before you tonight, we're back to talk about the zoning code update, and during the previous meeting on March 5th, we distributed the issues and options report, and during that meeting, we asked for direction on the review of the issues and options report. We heard from you that you'd like to hold special meetings to focus on the issues and options, that you'd like us to limit the meetings to approximately 4 hours, and also for us to return to the City Council and discuss with them having a consistent review process between the two boards so that the public can be engaged and involved. When we met with the City Council also provided direction. They requested that we accelerate special meetings within a 2 to 4 month period. They also had concern for the public process and maintaining convenience and consistency for involvement. And they also requested that we consider joint meetings. So before you tonight in your packet, there were 3 options within Attachment A. And the first option is the most accelerated option. As you can see on the screen, the light green indicates future Planning Commission meetings. Within this suggested option, there would be a meeting every Monday evening, except for those when there are holidays, and then the 3rd Thursday of each month. So under this review, the Planning Commission, you'd be complete of your review by June 22nd. And we built in a little bit of extra time in case we needed extra meetings to complete that either the last week of June or July to extend it before City Council reviews. And then the City Council discussions, they would have 4 meetings, which would conclude at the end of July. So the complete review of the issue and options would be done by August 1st. Within option 2, it's a little less accelerated schedule. In this option, the special meetings are scheduled for the 3rd Monday and 3rd Thursday of the month. Under this option, the Planning Commission deliberations would conclude in July, 1 month later than the first option, and the City Council would continue through October, taking a 1-month recess in August. So, under the third option, we reference this as the more leisurely option. It includes just a special meeting on the third Thursday of the month. So this is the meeting that is normally scheduled for Planning Commission should we need to hold a special meeting. Within this option, the Planning Commission would conclude their deliberations in October, and the City Council would continue conversations on the issues through the end of February of 2016. We've also included a tentative public workshop on April 27th and 28th. We're looking at that now. That would be for our non-conforming structures in the R1 that have 3 or more units. That date is quickly approaching, so we may come back with a revision on that date. But we would like to start the special meetings with a joint kickoff meeting, which is proposed for April 30th. In your packets, there was attachment B, which was a survey of all the issues and options, and we were thinking it'd be a great idea to start off that kickoff meeting kind of grasping an idea of where each of you stand on the different options, and if there's consensus between the planning commissioners and city council that some of these aren't really issues and there's consensus on where you'd like them to go, and that would also help with removing some items from debate that aren't really worthy of debate. Also, we plan to go to the Traffic and Parking Committee on May 13th. So before you have the 3 options, we'd love to hear your feedback. These options are not limited. If you have better ideas of how to schedule this, we'd love to hear your ideas this evening. And we'd like to take a majority direction tonight so that we can bring it to City Council next week and let them know what your preferred option is and then possibly your second and third preference. Thank you.
Questions of staff? I have 2. All of the options assume these extra meetings. And the public workshop addresses the non-conforming multifamily issue only.
The public workshop would be to get more public input on that issue. It would be addressed during one of the special meetings with the commission.
Okay, and both of the workshops would address the same item. So you're just offering the public 2 opportunities to come in and...
Exactly.
Well, the idea there too is that we have a lot of these non-conforming structures all over town, and initially we thought we might divide it so that maybe everybody east of Soquel Creek is in one workshop and those west at another workshop, because they are different. I'm not sure that the folks who live on Depot Hill have the same view of it as folks in the Jewel Box.
It only addresses
It's only that issue.
non-conforming with
Correct.
3 or more units.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Who wants to jump off?
Well, I'm a little bit confused by the whole thing, but one of my concern was the public hearing component of this on some of these that are controversial issues. I don't think all 18 are, but some of them may be. And so what I was thinking, and maybe I'm wrong, is that we're going to have Ben Noble here, we're going to have the staff here, and people line up to talk about parking rules before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission will kick it around, and then later we'll have Ben Noble here and we'll have the staff here, and the public will line up to talk about the same thing again. And there's something about that, and then the council will do whatever they want to do. They'll maybe know what we did, but it's not like it's an appeal when we make a decision that's supposed to at least have some sort of presumptions in favor of it. It's sort of like they start over. It seems kind of wasteful to me. That's the only... And I mean, the public is going to repeat. Ben Noble's going to repeat. And that was my comment originally. Is that the best process? And I guess, maybe nobody's come up with anything better. I mean, joint sessions are a problem because we don't have the facilities. We've had joint sessions and we have 8 people up here tucked together, and then we got 2 over there and 1 outside in the parking lot. It's just that's the problem with joint meetings here, is we're not big enough to really accommodate.
If I could, I attended the city council meeting. Your letter was well received that you had written, and there was some discussion about that. And my perception was that they really didn't want to have joint meetings per se. And I think the layout that you have, where we have joint meetings initially to talk about concepts and work direction, is good. I think to get us all in the same format and understanding. But I didn't come away with that they wanted to necessarily have joint meetings with us, that they would take our advice, that they appointed us for reasons and they understand why.
That would be the first time.
Well, maybe I'm being selective who I listen to in the process, but that's what I came away with. And so I'm hoping that those joint meetings you have them initially in the process, correct? These joint meetings, and that would be like a kickoff, so we all have the same rules and an understanding of where we're going, and then we could do our thing and make our recommendations and let the city council take a stab at it. So.
And there is the option, as we're moving through this, for, say if we get to traffic and parking, and if it's really an uneven, there's a lot of disagreement, we could, you could direct us that you'd rather have a joint meeting to discuss certain items, and we could take that route as we're moving through these. And also during the council meeting, they did discuss that you utilize the code more than they do, so they will be looking to your recommendation because you understand it more thoroughly, the zoning, and that they expect when it comes back, after they've given their recommendation, if it's different from yours, the zoning ordinance itself will come in front of you, and in your recommendation there, you could also give more of an explanation of why you don't agree with where the council went, so that there could still be more. I know that doesn't sound like I'm shortening the process by any means.
Well, I think Commissioner Newman's comments are not necessarily directed to where there are problem areas. It's just the whole process that the public, the staff, and the consultants have to go through 2 full meetings. But I don't see joint meetings being any less cumbersome. I think they are going to be lengthier. Therefore, there's probably going to be as many total meetings, or close to, as we would have. I just don't see that being very fruitful. I understand what you're saying. I do.
Might be right.
Yeah, I think staff has had some of those same concerns. I mean, it's a long process. There's going to be some going back and forth. Another approach that some agencies take when they update their zoning codes, they just write it and drop it off on your desk. Say, here you go, what do you think? I didn't think that was going to work very well with us. It's so outdated. There's so many things we heard when we talked to people about potential changes that it felt like we needed to kind of get policy direction before we started writing. But I get it too. I mean, when we look at these schedules, we're cringing and thinking, my God, we could be here 2 years from now talking about the same stuff, and I don't think anyone wants that. But
well, I think kicking it off with a joint meeting and going through the list and saying, what direction are we going to go? I've started going through and figuring that out, and unfortunately what I'm finding is that most of the ones that I'm looking at, I'm picking a combination of things, because one isn't a cure-all. So it may not be as simple as going through and saying, okay, we're on path 1, let's go. But I think it's really good to get the meeting of the minds on what direction we're going. And from the public perspective, I think it's going to be really important that we handle a few at each meeting, and we widely publicize which few we're talking about, so they don't show up at another meeting wanting to talk about parking when we talked about parking last week. And I'm not sure if that was one of your early concerns.
Something just dawned on me about it's the public participation part, which I don't want to sound like I'm against public participation. I'm just concerned about the most efficient way to do this. Would it be possible to put this out to the public and have the first meeting after the joint meeting for the public to address all the issues that they want to address, and take all the public input at that time, and then at subsequent meetings go through our 3 or 4 at a time with remembering what the public had?
We still would have to have, it still has to be a public hearing, though.
Again?
Right.
Yeah.
They'll have to be.
Yeah.
Hey, we have to let them participate again?
Yeah.
That won't work.
I came away from the city council meeting with a couple of things. One is, I think they were encouraged to trust their appointments to make good choices. 2 is to expedite. In fact, one option was to do it 4 nights a week, 4 weeks in a row, just to get it over with. So I think Katie or Rich bailed us out of that one. And because I don't know about you, but I need some time to review. I'm not that intelligent to remember all of our zoning for that many meetings right in a row. But that we do allow public participation in the meeting, at least to in the public hearing, so do the meetings in the evenings when people can get there. So for me, I think either options 1 or 2 are both acceptable for me. I think kicking it off so we both have a understanding with the city council members is a great way to do it. And I do understand the concern. There are going to be those nights where we're just going to take a lot of public input and maybe not get a chance to really get down and dirty on some zoning stuff. But
If I may make a note, as we've been researching how to notice public meetings and special meetings, the law does allow that only public comment on the items noticed for a special meeting may be heard. So
oh, that's good.
if we are very specific, this is the parking meeting.
Except if the council or the planning commission goes off
Precisely.
track.
You may, yes, you guys can go off track, but you can keep the public, as I understand it.
No,
I'm not
I won't be up here.
proposing
I'll
to
be
be
in
an
the
expert.
audience.
But if we include that language, I believe, as I've talked with the city clerk also, if we specifically say we will be discussing items X, Y, Z, public comment will be limited pursuant to state law to these specific items. It's a way, I think, of managing those.
I would be in favor of 2. One seems,
A little aggressive.
sorry?
A little aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah.
The 5 nights a week was a good extreme to start from, but
Yeah.
1 is still a little bit. I could go with option 2 as well, and I think that there's going to be a lot of discussion after we go through all of the discussion and then we get the rewrite. Right, then the rewrite's going to come back to us and we're going to go through that and make sure that everything got laid in there, the way that we intended it to. And I think that the appointments and their councilmen can work together at some point. But another thing that I did hear from them, I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I did watch it on the video. And I heard that they understand that we're not always going to agree, and they accept that. They respect the job that we do, and so they really are interested in understanding our reasoning. And if there are issues that they really go the other way on, there were comments that they might send those back to us and have us look at them again, and maybe we have a joint meeting to talk about it so that they're not, throwing out all of our work and just doing what they want to do. I did hear that loud and clear from the comments that they made, so. So I'm hearing an agreement on option 2. Ron, you're quiet because you're not going to be here?
I'm not going to vote.
Okay.
I wouldn't
Can I
assume
have a question here? Are we going to be reviewing the work that we did simultaneous, I think it's probably said in here and I forgot, simultaneous to working on this, or are we going to work on it, get the review back, and that's not included in the different option timelines? That's going to happen after those timelines, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
We'll be updating the original spreadsheet showing which options you were in favor of. We'll be preparing staff reports for future city council
Yeah.
meetings to explain your perspective and what we heard, but
Simultaneous,
we
too.
won't be taking them back to you
Right.
for review.
Got it. Okay.
We'll keep moving forward.
And they'll be working on the budget as well while we're starting on this, so they'll be busy. One thing I would like to note on the website, the new way that the website is laid out, it's really nice the way that meetings are noticed right on the front page. As soon as you go on, it said, here's what's coming
Yeah, I
up,
love
boom,
that.
boom, boom. And if we could just make sure that the description for this meeting, when it comes up, is clear. Items, 1, 2, 3, this is what we're going to talk about. And that the packet then be behind it. I know I went on to the website looking for the an ad hoc meeting, and I could see the agenda, but I didn't get to a packet. And I don't know if it just wasn't there when I looked or what the deal was. But once that then goes down, there's nothing left. There's no minutes. There's no agenda. But on the special planning commission meetings, there would still be a packet available for people to look at, correct?
I believe so.
Yes.
And there was a packet for that ad hoc at some point, maybe
Yeah.
not when you looked, but I was able to go down and read the packet for that, so.
And one of the things we will do our best to do is have a schedule there and continue to update it, because I imagine we're either going to go over or behind at some point, and so we'll adjust it to try to let the public know as things change.
Maybe on the regular planning commission meeting that we don't talk about it, we make calendar adjustments as
Yeah.
needed, so that everybody gets a chance to not miss something.
I'd like to make some comments in general, because I'll be a member of the audience. I would like to see you more than rely just on the website, that you take out ads in the paper. Don't just rely on the reporters to put it in, to actually buy space in the paper to announce these meetings that you want the public to attend. Because I think you'll get greater participation, because a lot of seniors don't go on the web and don't use the website. Saying that, the one thing that's really concerned me, and I know this is not a reflection on you, Ed, I know when we were doing the general plan, I attended a lot of the meetings. You probably saw my face too much. And what came out as the final general plan was not always what the consensus was of the board. It was changed, not by this staff, but by staff later on. And so now when I question people that were on the board with Ed, God, I don't remember you guys doing this, they say, no, that was not done by us. And I think the zoning is going to be the nuts and bolts of how everything works in the city as far as development. And I think that you need to make very concise decisions. Even though you may all have a different opinion, you need to come to some consensus on how an item is going to be forwarded to the council. I think that's going to be very important. And I'll be out there watching you, but I mean, it just, not that that means anything, but it's just going to be clearer to the public. Because I think that the staff is being very ambitious on this, and I'm hoping that we do get good public input. But if we don't, it's going to come back to haunt us, because it did last time. And that's my only comments. And good luck on any of them. I'll come to any of them, so it doesn't matter. Oh, God willing, and I'm not pushing up daisies or something.
Does that give you the direction? And so the next step will be to issue a calendar. If you could issue a calendar, I am confused by the format of this calendar a little bit.
The colors are hard to read.
But if you could issue a calendar that says, you know, joint meeting, special meeting, all the way through, that would be really helpful.
Commissioner Newman, what is your preference?
I'm fine with whatever the other commissioners want to do.
Okay, so option 2 is what I've heard.
I take it you're going with option 2, right?
And do you want to suggest a second option so we know when we get to City Council? I think that would be helpful. Is there a preference toward?
Option 3 would be my
3.
preference.
3, the only problem with 3 is that it stretches the time so that, you know, if any of us want to take any longer than, you know, it's like every week, right, until October or something?
Yeah.
Or is that right? That's a lot of time to be stuck in Capitola, you know, for...
Maybe this will be a test of their word of saying, let the planning commissioners decide. And
There you go.
I think they'll support option 2.
2, okay.
Yeah, because option 1 is just, I mean, I couldn't do option 1. So these surveys are due back to you by April 27th, I believe. Is that the deal?
By, let me just make sure. April 20th.
April 20th.
Yep.
And can we do this electronically and send it back to you, or are we checking it off and dropping it down? in
If
paper?
you'd like to, it's in an Excel.
Spreadsheet.
I'll take a look at it and see if I can make it electronic for you in the PDF.
Okay. And the first meeting is the joint meeting, and you'll have tabulated everybody's responses, so we'll be able to see. In your tabulation, will we see just raw numbers of 10 people, or will we see council and planning?
I think it would most likely be helpful to break it out between council and planning so that there is an understanding of between the two bodies, especially where we're in the joint session.
Excellent.
Yeah, it would.
And then the public would be able to see that online. So they'll know what direction we're going, or if we have a direction, before they come to the public meeting.
Yeah, we
So
put it in the staff report.
When are we supposed to have these back?
April 20th. So you have 17 days.
Okay.
Ooh, that's almost an item a day. Okay.
Okay, we appreciate your help. Thank you.
I'm not clear, which option did they have to approve? Two?
Two.
Okay, thank you.
And we
I'll
don't-
throw the others away, that's the reason.
Director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of brief items this evening. There was a meeting of the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee, as you well know, this past week. They're going to be forwarding their recommendation for the redevelopment of the Civic Center Plaza, the City Hall property, for a public outreach process at City Council next Thursday. And then also there's going to be a workshop for the landscape improvements at the Rispin Mansion. That's going to be the 11th of, or this week, yeah, April 11th at 10 a.m. in the community room right next door. So if you're interested, show up. That should be a good project, and we'd like to hear everyone's input. That's all I have this evening.
That's at 10 a.m., the Rispin?
Correct.
Thank you.
And it's right here
That's not
across the hall.
next week, 11th?
It's on the 11th.
On the 11th, next week, yeah.
Which is a Saturday.
And it starts at 10, did you say? I have 11 down for that. 11 to 1.
At 10.
I had 11 too, but I just changed it to 10.
Might have to take it back.
Better to be an hour early than an hour late.
Always go home, get more sleep.
There you go.
I stand corrected. 11 o'clock.
Great.
You just saved me from being an hour early.
You could help set up, probably.
No. Okay. Anything else on the director's report?
That's all I have this evening.
Commissioner comments?
So I have a general comment about the subdivision process. This is not specific to any application. We don't do many subdivisions here. I think the time I've been on the commission, there have been very few. So, and there are a lot of jurisdictions like that. And so you get a lot of, it's a complicated process because it involves not only the city jurisdiction, but the county surveyor's office and then the Bureau of Real Estate at the state level, and the interaction and the sequencing of all that is really kind of confusing. And so you see a lot of things come out of it, like I think we saw. And if we get another subdivision application, I think that would be a good time to kind of really drill down on this a little bit and get it kind of right. Not that it's, I mean, what's going on here is fine, but there are some fine-tuning, let's say, that can take place. Some of that was brought up by the engineer.
You know, I'll just make a comment real quick. The interesting thing about the last time a person wanted to subdivide a lot was the one on your street, TJ, the long narrow house and the house
right.
next to it. And we
Those are two
received an
different
opinion from the then planning director that, in fact, we couldn't entertain that. So it's kind of interesting that state law may have changed from the regulations that were in our subdivision requirements here, and that's the reason earlier tonight that I pushed so hard for, not for that poor gentleman, but for getting it, because what happens is that until you get a meets and bounds description of the property, you know, the placement of the houses is subject to whatever that is, because all your setbacks come off of that, all your zoning ordinances come off that, and I think it's very important. So I think Ed's right. I'm just chiming in on him.
No other comments. We'll adjourn to the next Planning Commission meeting on Thursday, May 7th at 7 p.m. here at City Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Ron?